Philip, in your own words, just kind of give an explanation of what you do, and if you can slightly define your personal relationship with hospitality and how it's driven you around the world, I would love to hear that in a minute or two. If that makes sense.
All right, I'm not sure I can cover all that in a minute or two, but I'll do my best. Yeah? All right.
Brilliant.
Hi, I'm Philip Barnes. I'm the CEO of Rotana, based in Abu Dhabi. I've been in this role now for about 2.5 years. I came to this role after 24 years with Fairmont in the US, Canada, the UK, in a variety of different roles. Prior to that, I was with Shangri-La. I spent also 10 years with Four Seasons. I've worked on 5 continents in a plethora of different roles with those organizations. But I would suggest to you that my primary skill set relates to repositioning of assets, redefining strategies relating to the positioning of assets, and basically dealing with what I call problem children, which is not to say that Rotana is a problem child, but I was asked to come into Rotana. I'm the first CEO that Rotana has had from outside the company. So I came with a very different perspective. It's very much of a Middle Eastern company, it's a regional company, and I'm trying to elevate it, and we are elevating it, onto the global stage through a variety of different ways. We currently operate 80 hotels in 14 countries, so I'm pretty busy.
The way you defined Emirati-based hospitality over the last 2 years too, as you've been diving deep into Rotana's culture, I think is also very prescient right now, right? Like the whole region is taking something that it has been doing for millennia and generations in a modern way, and it is standardizing it and it's making it available. How are you guys defining yourself as a center of gravity, a place to be? Because as you said before, you're really good at making individual properties come alive again to a new audience. So your properties do that in a very specific way already. How are you imagining you guys standing out now that you're a part of that global stage like that?
It's an interesting question because I tend to look at the world in which we operate, and I think there's an awful lot of blandness in our industry. I think the consumers are very confused. There's so many brands. I'm in the business and even I don't understand what all the brands are and what they do. So when we embarked on this journey, there were 2 things in mind. One was that we're owned by an Emirati family, and our chairman, Nasser Al-Nawais, I came out here to talk to him before I took the job, and he spent, it was 2 days, we were talking about every subject under the sun, but he came back to the same recurring themes, which was quality and people. And for him, hospitality is all about taking care of people. Because if you live here in the Emirates, and this is my second time of living in the Emirates, you really get a sense of family in ways that you don't get in other parts of the world. Anecdotally, I'll quickly tell you, I recently had to go into the hospital for a surgery, and I had just gone to sleep, and the CEO of the hospital came in with his phone in his hand because the chairman's daughter had called to tell the CEO of the hospital, our CEO's in there, please make sure he is well taken care of. Now, that they do that because it's instinctive, it's part of who they are. It doesn't happen in other parts of the world. And so having that kind of DNA in your culture is critical. And I think that people are looking to get away from what I refer to as the blandness and the sameness. And they want something that defines where they are. Look, how many times have you traveled? I've traveled all over the planet. And I wake up in a hotel and it's my first time in that hotel or my first time in that city, and I wake up and I go, where am I again? Because you don't know. And if there's nothing to help you define where you are, then you can go and stay anywhere. And I think, I could get on my hobby horse on this and start talking about service, which I think is also mediocre in most service industries today, because people are not really focusing on what the needs of the guest are. And these are the things that to me define who Rotana is.
I think something that you're talking about here, which I see as part of this future kind of vision towards hospitality. I come from a career of high touch, ephemeral experience design at a high level of hospitality, Michelin starred cuisine, service, but I'm doing it from a more ephemeral perspective for the last 25 years. And the last 2, I've been segueing into more permanent ownership. So as I look at these moments, I believe the buildings need to be alive. You can't just have beautiful architecture, interior design, and call that a brand. You can't say, we use dark wood, so we're this modern company. You have to bring it to life with activities, action, and an interaction with the local community in a way that I believe has to be authentic. You know what I mean? Whether it's architecture or cultural or cuisine, all 3 need to come alive in some way.
For sure. Certainly the architecture, the design, those things are important components. But it doesn't matter how beautiful the hotel is. It doesn't matter how stunning the architecture is or the interior design. but it's the team that's in it that brings it to life. And that to me is the key issue. How do you bring the experience to life? Because the guest doesn't remember.
Exactly.
They might not remember the artwork, they might not remember the architecture, but they will remember how you made them feel. And you can only do that through people. There's a lot of conversation in our industry today about AI and how it's going to transform everything. It's not, because AI won't smile at you. AI won't say, Michael, great to see you back. Right? It might welcome you with a welcome back because it's been trained to do that, but there'll be no sense of recognition that goes over and above what they can do. That is what our business has been built on for my entire career. And to me, it comes back, I was in one of our hotels today and I was talking to the team and I was asked about leadership, and they said, what to you is the most important component of leadership? And I said, servant leadership. You're all here to take care of your colleagues who take care of your guests. You are here to be servants to them as you are servants to the guests. People don't like that word. They go, oh, that's a horrible world in today's world. Sorry, get over it. This is the hospitality industry. It's about taking care of people. Critical.
That process of creating a space of safety and comfort, right, inside the property, inside the adventure that you're on. And I would love to hear your thoughts. You know, a lot of why I'm here is because my personal style of hospitality challenges the guest in a way that causes them to be slightly uncomfortable in the way that they need to be to grow. And part of that is in that desire to fight the blandness, whether that be having a new cuisine in the fancy restaurant that's on top of the hotel, or creating an experience on property that is dynamic for their body. What are some of the unique ways you're seeing to fight that blandness that maybe challenges that status quo for what we think is quote unquote great hospitality in that white glove servant way, but still provides the safety basket to let people, you know, be completely free and at rest?
I mean, using your example, Michael, of the restaurant that has a cuisine which is unfamiliar. We're in the Middle East. We have a lot of cuisines in our restaurants that are not familiar to the average guest, okay? We have guests from the United States, for example, in this part of the world, or from Canada. There's a lot of things on our menus that they may not be familiar with. So they're automatically disadvantaged. I get your point, but we want to try them. This comes back to the relationship that the server builds with the guest from within minutes of arriving.
Yes.
You know, in terms of making you feel comfortable, in terms of being able to explain the dish in a way that makes it familiar, that makes it easy, makes it exciting. And to me, this is where it always begins, in that sense of how you get greeted, in that sense of how you get educated as to the environment that you're in. And again, in our industry, I think we have taken a lot of things for granted, and you can't do that. And you have to really, it's that old expression, you talk about white glove service in high-end restaurants. It's that old expression that's been around for as long as I've been in the business. Read the table. Understand who at the table, who's comfortable, who's not, how are you going to help them, right? How are you going to deal with individuals, and deal with individuals from different backgrounds and different nationalities, because again, we're in a melting pot of a world.
Yep.
And you can't approach a table with a group of Middle Eastern guests in the same way that you would approach a table with a North American guest, or a British
100%.
guest, or a European guest. So it's all of those things.
I talk to a lot of performers in my world, and magic is one of these things that I take for granted occasionally because I forget how one-on-one it really is supposed to be in certain regards, right? When it's one-on-one too, the impact is so much deeper. But it's a live performance art that person has to do with that guest in the moment. That is the same kind of energy that good service requires. It is improv comedy at its highest level. It's listening, it's saying yes, and it is moving the conversation in a way that feels both thematic into the intention of the property that they're at, the place that they're in, but also thematic for where the guest wants to go. I've recently found unique hospitality, Philip, in a building and in a gentleman named Cornelius Bird here. The project is called All Blues, and it's a listening lounge. It's a place where you go to sit down and listen to records instead of a live band. They have an amazing stereo, but they also have a flawless execution of hospitality, and Cornelius talks about it as radical, right? But it's a small space. Where have you been lately, or if you can imagine a point over your history of seeing the world, where you found hospitality in a unique location that really blew you away? Somewhere where it didn't have to be, you know what I mean? For it to be like, wow, I can't believe this is making me feel the way that I want to feel in my hotels or in the thing that I want to do with my guests. And it's kind of left an impact with you.
Well, yeah, Michael, I'm a creature of habit. So let's get that out of the way to begin with. So I lived in Vancouver for many years, and my children and my partner would all say to you, yeah, and he goes to two restaurants consistently in Vancouver. All right. Now, the first one is an Italian restaurant. Absolutely fantastic food. Not a Michelin star restaurant, but fantastic food, very high end, very
Yep.
good quality. Why do I love going there? Is it just the food? No. It's because I
Yep.
walk through the door and pretty much everybody on the floor is rude to me in the first 10 minutes that I'm there. And I say rude to me as in the sense of familiarity. So I walk in and Bobby, the maitre d', looks at me and goes, Phil, where have you been? You haven't been here for 3 weeks. I sit down and the
Yes.
servers who've been there in that restaurant for 20 years come over and go, please tell me you're going to order something different for a change. We can't cope with you ordering the same things. That to me, that's one of my favorite restaurants for all of those reasons. And the service of the food is great. The other restaurant that unfortunately has gone away now, but was indeed a Michelin star restaurant. And the chef was the operator. And he was a little bit different from my Italian restaurant in the sense that he was Swiss French, he was a little more reserved, and for him it was all about delivery, it was all about the presentation, but every dish that came out was phenomenally presented and the flavors were always superb. And I loved going there because I would say, well, what do you want me to have for dinner? It was the opposite of the Italian restaurant. I would go in there and I'd say, please send out what you'd like. And that has always been, for me, the defining moment. When the operator, the chef, the maitre d', whoever, knows you well enough to be able to have comfort and confidence to send out something that, going back to your point, you may never have tried, but makes you feel so spectacular by sending out something that they think is going to be right for you, and you taste it and you go, this is exactly, because they know you. They know your taste. And I think that when you're talking about hospitality, I grew up in a world that was very different from the hospitality industry that we're in today, because it was much smaller, to be blunt, when I started. It was that personal touch that was required everywhere you went. It was attention to detail everywhere you went. And that to me is something that needs to come back into the business in ways that it doesn't exist today. I hear people saying, well, you're asking for the impossible. I'm not. If you take, for example, in Rotana, everybody has heard about Rosalind, who was a breakfast server at the Savoy. Okay? I was
Okay.
MD of the Savoy for 4 years. Okay? And I would go in there and I would watch Rosalind interacting with guests. There are guests staying at the Savoy because of Rosalind. Because she remembers them. She remembers what they ordered. She remembers what they drank. She makes them feel like they're family. And she delivers a spectacular level of service without anybody overseeing her, but she's allowed to be who she wants to be. And she knows her business well enough to read the room. And with me, I mean, I said to my F&B director one time, I said, listen, if you ever leave me, it will be a problem. But if Rosalind leaves me, it will be a disaster. And it's recognizing who's doing what in the business and setting them free to be successful. And I could use Rosalind, I could talk about Patrick, who's the doorman at the Pacific Rim in Vancouver, I could talk about Ryan, who's the doorman at the Century Plaza in LA. I can talk to you about all sorts of people in our business who are the reasons why people go to those hotels or restaurants.
Yep.
That is when I start referring to servant leadership. Your job is to serve those people and to look after them. As you can tell, I get a little bit excited on this subject.
I love this kind of stuff because to me, again, I love the performance art of it, right?
Yeah.
For me, a tableside Caesar salad is a performance. You want me to come out and take the lobster out of the shell and do all the things? I went to university in Boston and I worked at every expensive restaurant around that town in the hopes of learning all those little nuances from the kitchen side, from the table side, from the wine service side, bartending. And I love the aspect of it because at night I would go play guitar in rock and roll bands and I felt the same presence. Do you know what I mean? And I think where I'm looking at the future of hospitality aligns with what you're saying. I think brands need to start to stand for things. And I think it has to be more than, again, the type of wood and the type of art that you have on the wall. I think it has to be, how am I delivering this service? How am I choosing the passionate audiences that I'm going to give extra service to? Now, I'll give everybody great service, but I'm going to have to focus on some people whose niche style aligns with either my property's niche or my personal, as an operator's niche, right? If we talk about Emirati style, how does that differ? And how do we say, choose us because of these things and choose somebody else for the things that you're looking for that are different, and move away from the blandness in that way.
Michael, to do that, and I agree wholeheartedly with you, because everything you just said is, these are all subjects I cover. And I'll just touch on musicians for a minute, because being an operator of a hotel, the Pacific Rim, for example, in Vancouver, has a live music in the lobby every day from 2 o'clock in the afternoon till gone midnight. And I literally remember talking to the booking agent and saying, you've got to educate the musicians. They're not here to play what they want. They're here to play what the guest wants. They're here to play the music that the guest wants to listen to. So it's thinking about those things. But if you really want to focus on great service delivery, the first thing you have to do is focus on your teams. And I'm going to do a little bit of bragging right now about Rotana, because as we're coming out of 3 months of this crisis, I sent out a note to all the GMs in the first few days. And I was very straightforward. I said, be entrepreneurial, protect your revenue streams, reduce your costs, do everything you need to do to drive performance, but most importantly, protect your teams. I have just finished literally going round all the hotels in the UAE over the course of the last few weeks. And I've been talking, and I went to say thank you to the GMs and the teams, because they've done a phenomenal job. And I asked them what it was that they felt we did really well during the crisis. And they said, we did things that other companies didn't. I said, what do you mean? They said, we protected our teams. We didn't have layoffs. We didn't have redundancies. And I said, well, because my message to you was very simple. Protect the teams, because this will end. And when this ends, you better be able to come back full steam. But when you come back full steam, having protected your teams, they now have a level of loyalty to you and commitment to you that they might not have had before, because they've watched what happens in our industry. If you treat people like disposable assets, you pay the price. If you treat people
100%.
like they are family members and you look after them in the best possible way you can, people remember that, because they're like the guest. It's how you made them feel. Our service scores during this whole period did not dip. They stayed up where they were prior to the crisis. And that was with reduced staffing, that was with reduced services, and that was because of the teams and because of the leadership of those teams.
The one major thing that I heard last year at FHS that was just repeated ad nauseum in different ways was there are not enough service professionals to handle the amount of service need in the kingdom at the moment. They need to be trained and inspired over the next 4 years to meet the needs of the World Expo in 2030. And if you have the knowledge and the energy that you're talking about here to think about your staff and support them over this period, help them grow, that to me is also something that we take for granted in other highly developed hospitality ecosystems. And I know this sounds silly, but like the guy who's like me, who was 22, just graduating from university in a rock and roll band, tending bar at the hottest bar in town, levels into the role that I'm in right now, right? We get hooked into the hospitality world. And if you don't have that ecosystem of coffee shops that train the bartenders or the people to get into the rooms, events, you don't have large events coming through, you're never going to know how to serve the heads of state, the right way to pour the wine. There's all these small little nuances, but if you don't flex the muscle enough at the fried chicken level, you're never going to do it at the caviar level. And you're never going to know to combine the two of them to make them into a hot moment all over the world, right? And I think you've done this a bunch of different ways. To wrap this conversation up, we're going to Future of Hospitality conference next week to talk about this. How do we recover in the medium term after this crisis ends? How do we retain this energy and move forward over the next 4 years as this part of the world opens up again and people start returning en masse? What do you think that future of hospitality looks like, not just in conflict, but unabated, unchained? Where do you see this going, and where is your dream state for a group like Rotana over the next 5-7 years?
If you ask me about hospitality in general, and when I talk about hospitality in general, I'm talking about everything from hotels to restaurants to bars to airlines, anybody who's related to the business. And I am scathing in my reviews of our industry as a whole, because I think it is full of mediocrity. And it is full of mediocrity because of all the reasons that people have as to why they can't be the best that they can be. And I'm not talking about fine dining. I'm not talking about luxury resorts. I'm talking about everybody. If you have a pub in your hotel and you can't make it the best pub in the neighborhood and still be a pub, then you have a problem, because you will be mediocre. All right. You know, I was in one of our hotels not long ago. We've got a great young chef in there, Ollie, who's terrific. He does a very good job. And I said, Ollie, you know what? Your flavors are terrific. Your presentations could be so much better. Please work on it. Please look at it.
Hmm.
Please think about it. Stop thinking about it as a pub and start, and I'm not saying turn it out like a Michelin-star restaurant. It's fish and chips, it's fish and chips. But make it look appetizing on the plate. Okay?
Yes.
Because you eat with your eyes first. And it's those kind of conversations. And for me, when I'm in the hotels, whenever I'm talking to our teams, I'm identifying things that I think are straightforward, are simple, that to your point, come from my background and my experience, but aren't part of their background experience. But when you challenge people to think differently, and they're good, talented people, as Ollie is, they go, oh, wow. The future lies in the leadership of the industry. I think the industry is getting distracted by things that take it away. You know, I had this conversation recently, as you're probably aware, we became part of GHA Discovery 6 months ago now. Major step for us in terms of a loyalty program. Before we joined GHA Discovery, we rolled out a new version of our repeat guest program because those things go together. I won't stay on your aircraft. I won't stay in your hotel. I won't visit your restaurant because I get points. I won't do it. And I don't think I'm unusual. Okay? What I will do is I will go to a restaurant where I get those benefits because it does a great job. And if I get points on top of it, it's like whoop-de-doo. I just got an additional benefit.
Right.
But I think that we're getting caught up in what marketing thinks, what loyalty programs think, and we're getting away from the guest. And we're taking our teams away from the guest. A friend of mine recently left, it doesn't matter which brand it was, but he recently left one brand to go and work for another because he was being micromanaged by his corporate office. Well, if you don't trust your general managers, you don't trust your senior leaders to do the best job you can, you shouldn't be in the business. Because quite honestly, when you sat in a general manager's role, you know that at 8 o'clock in the morning, you had a plan for the day that at 8:05 went sideways because a piece of equipment broke down or a guest had a problem, and now you're playing catch up on the day. And I'm sorry, but this is where the knowledge of what happens at the property level is critically important. And being able to talk to general managers, food and beverage directors, chefs, etc., with an understanding of what they do is critically important. And a lot of people in a lot of corporate positions in a lot of companies don't have that ability. And that's driving the mediocrity. It really is.
I always say the hospitality industry at the level you're talking about is very similar to big wave surfing. There are people that are out in the water surfing the actual waves every single day. And then there's a group of people on the cliffs with binoculars being like, there's a wave coming. Get ready for it, guys. And the empathy connection between those two, unless you foster it constantly, unless you encourage that by either switching positions regularly, making sure that those people that are got the binoculars are on the boat or something, you're going to lose that. You're going to lose that connection of how you give permission, because I never imagine myself as the general of an army. I think of myself more of like the head of an ant team. I'm like, hey, there's something over there that's delicious. There's 3,000 of us. We all have to go take care of this problem together. I'm going to give you tiny choices to make. Left, right, who cares? Find the thing that's delicious and bring it back here so we can all eat it. I'm done here. That's the best I can do. And I have to trust you guys and your micro decision-making ability to fulfill it consistently. And I think the empowerment that you're talking about on a global scale, I think it's possible with technology to empower people that are passionate like that to perform better. Hey, Philip, this is some information about Michael. Before you go talk to him, don't forget, here's some things. Oh, by the way, you have never served him before, so you should make mention of that.
For sure.
Great, but it still has to be delivered by a performer who's present, able to read the room and know that I want to hear that or I don't. I just want a cappuccino and I want to be left alone with today's paper because it's been a tough morning. And I think that kind of human ability to amplify technology's infinite scale, again, it's an individual level it gets applied. So we have to build teams that can give that permission and empower people wherever their culture is to be local and intentional in the way that they treat people fantastically.
Well, that, to your point, I mean, I have a fantastic CIO, Dominic, and Dominic is all about how do we enhance the guest experience, how do we reduce the administrative issues, how do we drive performance in the hotels through technology. But the technology has to work for people. It has to be something that is easy. Listen, I was at the hospital the other day. I seem to spend a lot of time in hospitals at the moment, but anyway, that's a different story. And I said to my doctor, I said, listen, I said, the only problem I have is I come in and I sit down with a new doctor who doesn't know me, and there seem to be difficulties in reading the file because of the way the network's set up and the doc. She said, you've hit the nail on the head. That is the problem. This is what we struggle with, is the way it's been set up. The system has to support the user. And
Yes.
as I've gone through my career, I've seen many occasions when, well, this is the way the system works. It's like, but that doesn't work for me, for the front desk agent. That doesn't say to the front desk agent, Michael stayed here before, he likes a room on the 3rd floor, he likes to be away from the elevator, and by the way, he wants feather pillows, not foam, and, right? That's what technology needs to do, because that is what matters. And if it can't do those things easily for the desk agent, it doesn't get used. And so it's kind of backing into it, if you follow my line of thought. Start with what the end user
100%.
wants and build the technology to support it. Right? And the technology companies have got a lot better at it. But I remember distinctly back in the 90s and the 2000s, when the technology company attitude, well, this is what we do and this is how we do it. So you're going to have to find out how to use it.
It hasn't changed all that much, but hopefully AI will actually fix that, right? That's one of my goals. We have this ability to say that, but there's different types of brains. Math brains see problems and they like to solve them. The performance and the process of showing up every day and getting on the wave and saying, I'm going to surf this way, and the wave being like, you're going to surf this way, and you be like, I'm still going to have to get to shore. I'm still going to have to do it elegantly and all this stuff. So they're different energies, and to be able to create a $500 million SaaS platform that can service an international hotel brand that has 80 hotels, that's a different brain than somebody who's like, I'm 32 and I'm here in the spa today, and this is my docket of issues that I have to deal with. Can you make me better at making the magic for these people? And again, this is how it's going to be for the next 10 or 15 years, trading those two hemispheres, balancing that thing and creating that conversation. It always seems so simple to say it's a yin yang thing, but it really is. It just, once it's out of balance, the harmony's not there and the guest feels it, and all of a sudden you got discordance everywhere.
The thing is, you end up having workarounds. And that's when people get frustrated, because no one wants to have to use a workaround. They want to be able to use the technology in the way they believe it was intended.
Philip, this was a great chat. Thank you so much. It's beautiful to see, again, your vision of modern hospitality here and how far and wide it goes. And I know you're not going to be at FHS this year, but I look forward to meeting up with Eddie and learning more about your group. Our chairman was at your chairman's roundtable in November at the property in Abu Dhabi. Loved it.
The one behind me. It's a Marriott resort, right?
Yeah.
It's a fabulous resort.
I can't wait. I had to speak at a conference in Dubai that week when they were in Abu Dhabi, so I missed it. But they said that the service that was provided at that conference for investors was spectacular, but also that your chairman really understands what you guys are doing at a level that is unprecedented, because he showed up, he was interactive, his family was interactive, they were there to learn, and they were there to ask questions and challenge the status quo. It doesn't happen at investor conferences. I hope, again, it happens at FHS next week like it happened for us last year. Again, I appreciate your time and the inspiration, Philip. It's been great.
It's great to chat with you, Michael.